This is a bit of a different video. Now, I've done some voiceover videos before when I've been talking about different, new rifles that come onto the market or things like that. But this one is more different than I've done before. I see a lot online, on Reddit, on Twitter, and I don't go on CGN very much, but I'm sure it's there too, of people making fun of people that post, I'm 100 rounds in and I had no problems. And you know what? I get it on the surface. It's kind of like, well, what's 100 rounds? It doesn't really mean anything. But I think a lot of it is fundamentally misguided. A lot of the, you know, anger or laughing at people like that is misguided. Now, this video is a bit of a response to something that I saw on Reddit, but you see this basically everywhere anytime anything new is announced. Now, if you're not aware, BCL announced their Grizzly, which is the SRV2 but in 308. They announced it at TACOM a couple of months ago, and it's now starting to hit store shelves. And if you're wondering, no, I won't be reviewing it. It's just too much money, and we'll get into that later. But someone posted on Reddit that they're starting to hit store shelves, and one of the comments that was there read as follows: "Classic Canadian review incoming. Put 100 rounds through this gun, reliable. Put 1,000 rounds through it last year, no issues. This thing is battle tested in SKS replacement. Good to go, just need to make sure XYZ for X amount of dollars is well worth the upgrade, or worth the fixes." And then they say USA reviews put 4,000 rounds through, no cleaning, no oil or lube, and if one thing breaks, it's unreliable. I have a lot of problems with that, and I don't mean to pick on this user specifically, which is why I'm not putting them on screen or anything like that, but it's a problem that I see all too often, and it is heavily misinformed about how things work. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is those lower round count reviews. Now, just from my perspective, over my channel, I've done really short reviews, like 150, 200 rounds. I've done what I would say medium reviews, like 300 to 500, 600 round reviews, something like that. And I've done 1,000 round reviews. But here's the thing. The more ammo that you shoot for a review, the more expensive it is. And that should be obvious, I'd hope. But it seems like there's a disconnect between what people see on YouTube and what people think actually happens. A lot of people, especially when you're a very small channel like I am, don't get that ammo for free. We pay for that ammo out of our own pockets. So doing 1,000 round reviews for everything is really expensive, and we just don't make that kind of money back. It's not possible. If you're a larger channel on the Canadian Firearms review side, then yeah, you have more opportunities. That generally is how it goes. Like I believe, for example, Hosier Gun Guy, I think he got an ammo sponsor that covered his ammo for the Templar review, if I remember correctly. It might not have been the Templar review, or I might be mixing someone up, but it does happen. Not often, but it does happen occasionally. The problem is that it doesn't happen every single video, right? None of us are Grantham. None of us are Demo Ranch. None of us are Brandon Herrera. None of us are Admin Results. There just isn't the same amount of money in the Canadian Firearms review space as there is in the American review space, and we'll get to that in a second. Now, I just wanted to end this by giving some insight behind the curtain to firearms review stuff. YouTube does pay, which is great, but it doesn't cover everything, not even close. If you want to do some calculations in your own head, and this is not right, these are very wide calculations, so you can't nail it down. But in general, if your video is monetized, which is not always the case, then a video will generally get anywhere between $3 and $9 per 1,000 views. So if you really think about it, if you look at a video that has 50,000 views, which is really, that's a great amount of views for a Canadian firearms review video, right? Most firearm reviews in Canada do not get that kind of view count, but a few do, and that's really great. But let's say you do a 1,000 round review of 5.56, and that video of some kind of 5.56 rifle, right? That gets 50,000 views. And let's say it's at the top end and you get $9 per 1,000 views. That's still only 450 views or $450, right? And a crate of $1,000 or $1,000, a crate of 1,000 rounds of 5.56 or 223 is like $750, $800. Sometimes you can get it on sale when things are going well for $690. So you're still losing money. So that leads me to the next thing, which is all of the reviews from anyone you see. I don't just mean YouTubers, part-time, whatever, hobbyists. I mean any review you see. YouTube, Twitter, CGN, Reddit, even on the gun store reviews, they say like 5-star, 4-star, whatever. On there, that too. All of those, the vast majority of those reviews are people that spent their own money on the rifle, people that spent their own money on ammo, and spent their own time, which is money, shooting it. And they're giving their feedback. And, part of the thing from that comment that I'd read was clowning on those people that only shoot 100 or 250 rounds. And they say it's great. And yeah, I get it, but you cannot take individual reviews like that alone. It doesn't matter. Even if, and like this guy in the comments said, what about 4,000 round reviews? That, in my opinion, is not indicative of a rifle, whether it's good or bad, or its production, whether it's good or bad. Yes, it can be interesting because you might be curious about how the rifle wears as time goes on, so it's useful from that perspective. Especially if you're someone who keeps their rifles for years and years and years and years, then yes, that is actually very useful information. But it cannot be taken in a vacuum, no matter what. Personally, I would rather trust 8 500 round reviews than 1 4,000 round reviews. And the reason, especially in the Canadian sphere, where quality control has been a problem, I trust a larger sample size to look for quality control defects. That, to me, is a bigger issue than wear after 4,000 rounds. And why do I say that? Because the vast majority of people in Canada do not shoot more than a few hundred rounds a year. They just don't. Yes, there are a fair few people that shoot a few thousand rounds a year. Most of those people shoot competition of some kind. So, already that's a very small section of our community, but it's still a significant portion, right? But it's not even close to the majority. And the amount of people that shoot more than 4,000 rounds of .308 a year is almost none, as a percentage of PAL holders in Canada. It's so small. So it's not really indicative of anything. And if your product has quality control issues, like we've seen time and time and time again, or design issues, which would come up within the first few hundred rounds, which we've seen time and time again, then having those 8 500 rounds review is far more valuable, in my opinion. You might disagree, that's fine, but that's how I see it. And that's how I kind of have my content set up at the moment, because I would love to do these 1,000 round reviews, but they're just super expensive. And I can't, yes, I make some money back on YouTube, and thank you if you watch the ads, but I don't make money on YouTube. I am actively losing a set amount of money on YouTube, but it's part of my hobby. It's what I like to do. So in a way, you could say I'm subsidizing my hobby, but the content strategy that I have for contributing to the community is adding my voice to a collective of voices who have done reviews, whether it be 100 reviews that gets posted on, CGN, or the CFEC guys that do thousands of rounds of thousands of rounds of ammo through a gun for a video, or for a report, not a video. So that leads on to the next thing, which is comparing Canadian side of firearms reviews to the US side. Now, like I had already mentioned, we just don't have the population for this. The potential customer base, and this is like business 101. If you're advertising for a potential customer base. Well, because of our licensing system and because it's not an instant licensing system, it takes, it can take a couple months or it can take a year, like mine did. Then your customer base grows very slowly and is relatively stagnant. We have about 2.2 million PAL holders in Canada. That is the customer base. Immediately, that's the customer base for, sponsors, whether it be, and of course I'm talking about firearm sponsors here. So ammunition sponsors, firearm store sponsors, accessory sponsors, things like that. The customer base is 2.2 million. And because a lot of the things Canadian reviewers review is really only available to the Canadian market, then what ends up happening is that we just don't have the sponsorship money here or the sponsorship attention. It just doesn't exist. Yes, there are some that are cross-border, right? Especially PCCs. PCCs are cross-border. But ammo isn't even cross-border. With the way the regulations work in Canada and the US, for sending ammo and things like that, it's not easy. So it's just, it doesn't happen as often. And when you look at the bigger channels, so any of the group of I can't remember the name of the group that they're in, but like the Brendan Herrera Donut Operator, Demo Ranch, they have their own group. They can get sponsorship deals for a group, and it makes that really easy, but they're also bigger channels. Then you have like the Granthams, Micah Richards, all that. And you have some more independent channels like Paul Harrell was, and a few others that I'm forgetting. But regardless, them getting sponsors is easier in part because their potential customer base for the sponsors is orders of magnitude larger. Take out the children that can't buy firearms, take out the felons that can't buy firearms, you're still looking at hundreds of millions of potential customers. Hundreds of millions. That's no wonder that there's more sponsorships on American firearms reviews, because the potential to make your money back is there. It's much more difficult in Canada. And of course, that's not even counting view counts or whatever. Of course, it would technically be possible for a Canadian reviewer to get as big as Grantham. Technically. Unlikely, but technically. So I don't even want to get to the AdSense comparison between the two because it doesn't really matter. Now, I know he's in some hot water, MKBHD, right now. But if you look at when he's talked about the health of his company, it is, especially once you've grown to a certain size, you often need extra people to help run the business because it becomes a business. And the most important thing stops being the money you receive from YouTube and starts being the money you receive from sponsors. And so Canadian reviewers are capped for a lot of things at not being able to get huge name sponsors like American reviewers are. And I really don't want this to come across as me complaining about sponsorships or anything like that, because it's not. I just want to give some explanations as to why we see the kinds of reviews that we see in Canada. And in comparison to the US, that's one of them. Now, the other thing has to do with just economics. The Canadian dollar is worth 70 cents for every one American dollar. So already, the purchasing power of Canadians is a lot lower than the purchasing power of Americans. And that means not only for reviewers that make videos and stuff, but for everyday people, that, like I said, spend their own money on their rifles and ammo and post their findings automatically indicates a lower amount of money spent, or which means a lower amount of ammo spent. So when you compare, essentially, if you want to do it this way, for the same amount of money, if ammo prices were the same, which they're not, which we'll get to in a second, someone spending 1,000 rounds or doing a 1,000 round review in the US is like someone in Canada doing a 700 round review immediately. Okay, that's that explains a big difference for a lot of us. And then the other thing is that ammo is just more expensive in Canada. Some of it, not all of it. But for example, anything from China, surplus Chinese ammo, we have it way cheaper. And I'm very thankful for that. Thank you for the 7.62 surplus. But anything else is more expensive. 9mm, I believe, is on par, if not slightly more expensive in Canada, but relatively close. 5.56 is more expensive in Canada by a fair amount, at least 5 to 10% more. But the big one for this conversation was 308. You can find 308 in the US for the equivalent of like $1 a round Canadian, 90 cents to $1 Canadian per round. In Canada, it's $1.20. So we're already 20% more expensive. Just not ignoring the currency exchange. So again, it's just harder to. We're going to have fewer reviews because that's just the economic reality that we're in. And it sucks, and ammo prices have gone up, especially under Trudeau. Thank you. But there's nothing we can do about it, right? It's just the way things are. So what can be done to fix this? Well, the number one thing is getting access to the firearms that most Americans review. So AR-15s, AKs, MCXs, things like that. That would make a huge difference. Because now, Canadians who are skeptical of buying Canadian-made stuff can be like, I don't want to potentially waste my money on this. Let me look at the American reviews. And they can see, is this good? They have plenty of American reviews to compare. And they probably have large round counts of reviews to compare. The other thing is just waiting. If you remember, when the BCL Bison, when the BCL SRV2 came out, there was a lot of intrigue about it. It was a really interesting looking rifle. People were like, did they finally make a good 180? Is there finally a good Canadian 180 when it released? And there were basically no reviews because the way that it generally works in Canada is people buy their own rifles and buy their own ammo and do it themselves. But that takes time. That doesn't happen immediately. And so it took a few months to as much as a year to when you search on YouTube now for it, you're going to find a whole bunch of video reviews and things like that. And you can make the decision for yourself if you should buy one. You shouldn't. But you could make the decision for yourself. And so with the upcoming rifles that are going to be released soon, we have the Mark III 180 and R18. We have the ATF SPR9. We have, I'm forgetting, of course, the Grizzly, the BCL Grizzly. And I'm sure there's some more generation upgrades coming soon for other stuff. We just have to wait. Like, we don't really have a choice. We kind of just have to wait. We have to wait for people like myself who do video reviews to publish their findings. And we have to wait for everyday normal people to decide to publish whatever amount of ammo they shot. And then you can group them all together. You can do your research. You can search up for hours, find all the different reviews, create, if you really want to take it seriously, you could create like an Excel spreadsheet of all the problems and all the benefits and whatever, and compare and contrast, because that's realistically what we have to do for now. So you can just wait. I was taught when I was younger, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And that doesn't always have to be the case, especially if you're the one being attacked. But if you're just scrolling on social media and you see a post that says that, and you go into that post and you make fun of them for posting it, why? Why would you do that? They could have just left the space blank. They couldn't have shared anything. and now we have fewer things to compare. So, yes, I get it. On an individual basis, it's not perfect, but don't make fun of them. If you have to say anything, say thanks. I look forward to comparing it with other reviews. And move on with your day. Save it if you actually are interested in buying the product so you can compare it to other stuff later. There's no reason for us to be so hostile to each other or to make fun of people that do low round counts that spent their own money on it. You just have to be patient until we can hopefully one day actually get more access to firearms in this country that the rest of the world can access. Sorry about this video. If you stuck to the end here, I appreciate it. I have videos planned for the rest of the year. They're not shot, but they're planned for the rest of the year. At least 3 firearm reviews and 1 end-of-year video. And of course, next year, there are plenty of things up for review. Like I mentioned, the Gen 3 of the Air or WK180 and the R18, as well as ATF SBR9, and a few others that I am very interested in reviewing. But again, time will tell. No set dates on those because we have no idea when they're actually coming out. But that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.